Our travels through Lost Louisiana takes us back to St. James Parish, where we began. According to folklore, about 150 years ago, there was a traveling merchant by the name of Leon Godchaux. Well, one night, sun was setting and he needed accommodations and asked an owner at a plantation house if he could stay the night. But Antoine Budowski said no and sent Leon on his way. A little bit upset, Leon promised that one day that plantation he would reserve it for himself. Well, in 1860, the plantation was up for sale. Leon bought it, and thus began the beginnings of Reserve Louisiana. Along the River Road in St. John Parish sits a 240-year-old home, which dates back to one of the area's first European settlers, Jean-Baptiste Lobel. Over the centuries, occupants of this plantation house played key roles in the St. John sugarcane industry. In the early 1820s, Francois and Elise Rioux, two free men of color, owned the plantation and home. The brothers were cousins to Norbert Rioux, an inventor and scientist who revolutionized a new refining process in the sugarcane industry. His system of vacuum pans heating one another in sequence had immediate impact. By 1896, Leon Godchaux bought the 2,000-acre plantation and main house from Antoine Budowski. Leon Godchaux and his family turned around a bankrupt plantation and by 1915 opened a sugar refinery on the site.
It and the entire Godchaux plantation thing is the backbone of this area. It served for many years. That was the main source of income for the families of this area, both blacks and whites. I was a teacher and a principal here for many years, for more than 30 years. And I think that the history of St. John Parish is beneficial to our young people. I particularly want young black children of this parish to know about the history of this building and about the history of Godchaux and the history of the entire parish, but particularly they need to know the contribution that was made by blacks.
The most recent and significant renovation effort came in the early 1990s when the Godchaux Reserve House moved from its original site, which is now property owned by the Port of South Louisiana, to its current location.
It was amazing. It was amazing. When they first talked about moving this building, I wanted that to happen, but I thought, oh, that thing will crumble before it gets there, but it made it.
It's hard to believe this big house being moved 2 feet, let alone nearly a quarter of a mile, about 12 years ago. However, monumental tasks will be the cornerstone for local officials in making this 240-year-old Godchaux house something for future generations, as well as future tourists.
What we'd like to do is to make here an African American museum, a museum and a tourist stop. It's right on the bus routes, and a couple of 100,000 people go right past this building. In the museum, we could focus on the sugar industry, on the part that the river played as transportation. I have wonderful expectations of what could happen here. From here to about 1.5 miles to the ferry. Our long-term goal would be to have an arts district, and this is just the beginning.
The biggest challenge to this project, like many restoration efforts, is finding the money. Organizers would love to secure one benefactor to take them under their wing. Unfortunately, that has not happened, and the only nest egg you'll find here comes from the hundreds of pigeons currently making Godchaux House their home.
Business and industry has gone through a lot in the 90s and after September the 11th. Anywhere from small business to industry, we spent a ton of money on technology and security. And so we haven't found, someone who is willing to, step forward. So what we've had to do is go to some other resources on a state and federal level and apply for some smaller grants. It's going to happen. It's just taking more time than we anticipated.
I look at it from the prospect of what it could be, how it could be developed into a real great tourist attraction and a historical museum.
I hope you've enjoyed this edition of Lost Louisiana, Endangered Sites. Louisiana holds incredible history and culture, and some of the folks that you've met during this journey play an essential role in keeping that history alive. They know the importance of preserving this state's history and culture and hope you take the time as well to do your part. It may be with one of the subjects you've seen in this program, possibly with some other project closer to you. Either way, I urge you to take the time to help preserve Louisiana's treasures. I'm Charlie Whinham. Thanks for joining us on this edition of Lost Louisiana. Hey, Jay.
Hey, good morning, Charlie. How you doing?